Renee, it is so good to see you. How are you doing?
Wonderful. It's so great to see your face and be here today.
I'm seeing you everywhere. I saw you speaking at the Aspire tour, and you were just with Dean, and Dean and Tony are doing a mastermind, and you just were part of that event, and you're just doing all these incredible events, Zig Ziglar events. Pray tell, what's going on? This is a busy year for you.
Yes, it is. I just hit about my 30th flight for this year. So it's very exciting. I'm so grateful for all of these opportunities and to be amongst so many people that I admire, to be out there as you just said. I was just in Scottsdale with Dean Graziosi and Tony Robbins. They just launched a new program called the Mastermind Blueprint System. So they used me as one of their testimonials because 4 years ago, I took one of their courses and that's what helped me to start my business. So it was a really beautiful full circle moment. So it was very special for me to share my story. And as you said, it's been such a gift touring with the Aspire team and getting on stages with some of the biggest names. I don't know if you know this, Kyle, but I am going to be opening up Madison Square Garden as one of the speakers when they come to New York. So I'm like, woo! In my neck of the woods. I'm from New Jersey, so I keep saying yes, and I think that's such a great answer for all of us because it's so easy to hold ourselves back from great opportunities or stepping outside our comfort zone because it can feel scary. But when we just say yes, and Shonda Rhimes talked about this, she has a book, The Year of Yes. When you just say yes and you step outside your comfort zone, that's really where the beauty of life resides. And that's what I've been experiencing a lot of, especially in these 4 years of being a business owner and speaking on stages all over the world.
No, I'm watching you do it. And you're so contagious with your energy and your
Oh,
vibration. In fact, I feel like I manifested meeting you. And I see you do little posts about manifesting because I had seen you at one of Tom Ziglar's events. And then lo and behold, Marco Santarelli, a really good friend of mine, he's part of my LA mastermind. He said, Kyle, you need to come to the Aspire event. He's one of the owners of the events. He gives me the dog and pony. I get there and we're standing out in front of the stage, and you come walking up to meet him because you have an extensive background doing Broadway plays. We're going to talk about that. Of course, Marco is an investor in many of those plays. And from there, we got to connect. And that was my number one purpose in being there, was to see you, to meet you, and to invite you onto the podcast.
oh, when you told me that, I got chill bumps. I was like, that is so special. And I do believe in being able to put those good vibes out there and make it happen. So to see you do it was so cool. And when you said that to me, you said, I came here to see you. I was like, wow. It was a really cool moment. I'm so happy that we connected.
No, that's a fact. And I went there just not really wanting to see a lot of people. It's like six tops. And then Tom Ziegler is like, hey, I've got a front row seat. Do you have a seat? And I'm like, I don't. So I sat with him and Michelle. And then come to find out, I didn't connect the dots that Howard Partridge, who was just on with me last week, and I go way back with Howard and Tom, who 30 plus years, uh, were again singing your praises. And so, yeah. By the way, Marco said, Kyle, your LA Mastermind is the same week as the Madison Square Garden event for Aspire. He said, you need to cancel it. And I have. So I might be there. I
Oh,
might.
I hope
Yeah.
so. Yes, I
Yeah.
would love to see your face there. That would be great.
Yeah. Not cancel, but reschedule, I should
Yeah,
say.
reschedule.
So, what I love about your story, being in the personal development space, you're a speaker, you're a coach, you're a best-selling author. We're going to talk about your book as well. But you began as a singer, a dancer, an actress, and tell me how you got on that path. First of all, you're from New Jersey, right? So
Yes.
do you have that typical Italian New Jersey upbringing?
Oh, yes, yes. You could find me as a little girl growing up in New Jersey. You could often find me around the kitchen table with my family, eating, laughing, sometimes arguing, but nonetheless communicating and connecting.
Hmm.
And I realize now in hindsight, that's why I've always been so in love with people and creating real bonds and connections and communicating. And since a little girl, Kyle, from 3 years old, I was a dancer. I loved dancing. I loved performing. I would sing and dance for my family. And I started taking dance lessons. And then from there, I started doing community theater. And when I had my first vocal solo, I was hooked. I was like, this is it. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life. So it was truly a childhood dream to be on Broadway. And I got to tell you, it is not an easy industry. It is so much based on your type, as they call it. That means that I could be the best singer in the room. I could be the best dancer. But if the casting department is looking for a girl who's 5'9" and I'm 5'2", I'm not getting the job. And it can be really challenging to protect yourself and to understand that it's not personal, because it feels personal. When someone says, oh, Renee, you look too Italian. You're not Italian enough. You're not tall enough. That can feel personal. And that's why it was so important for me to develop this strong sense of self and this strong ability to look inside and say, it's okay. I am bigger than this rejection. And I have to thank my father and my mother for instilling those values in me. But I faced, oh my goodness, thousands and thousands upon rejections throughout my life. But then in 2010, I reached my dream. I got my Broadway debut after touring all over the world for 3.5 years on several national tours like Cats, Disney's High School Musical, and Jersey Boys. And then I came back to New York because I said, Renee, you still haven't gotten your Broadway dream. Even though these shows are amazing, you haven't reached Broadway. And I came back to New York City and I auditioned, and West Side Story was my Broadway debut. And it continued from there. I did 5 Broadway shows total. And then I had the honor of doing my first major film directed by Clint Eastwood, which is Jersey Boys, where I got to play Frankie Valli's wife. And that story is really out of this world incredible and a true testament to the importance of authentic communication. So I can share that if you like, or we can save that for another time.
It's an amazing story. I heard you share it on Dean's podcast. And so we will give people a link to that. It's incredible. In your, you're listening to your inner voice, first of all, like you believing that you had a right to be in that movie was incredible. Well, go ahead and tell the story. Go ahead and tell the story.
And I'll give you the Cliff's Notes, okay? Because I know we have a lot to get to. In 2013, I was on Broadway playing Frankie Valli's wife in Jersey Boys. And one Sunday afternoon, I'm on stage singing, my boyfriend's back and he's gonna be in trouble. And who is looking back at me from 10 rows but the legend himself, Clint Eastwood. Clint was going around to all the different casts of Jersey Boys because he was going to be directing the film version. And at this point, Kyle, I never did TV, film before, nothing. I had only done theater. So I didn't even think twice. I said, they're going to hire A-list celebrities out of Los Angeles. Marissa Tomei is going to play my role. Like, I didn't even think twice about it until they started calling people in from our cast to audition. And they were looking for someone to play the role of Mary Delgado. So at this point, I call my agent and I'm like, listen, it would just be great to get an audition to be seen. Weeks go by. My agent calls me back. She says, Renee, I'm so sorry. I don't know what the problem is, but they won't give you an audition for Mary, but they'll give you one for one of the smaller roles, one of the angels who sings My Boyfriend's Back. And I hang up the phone, Kyle, so confused, so disappointed, because every girl I knew on Broadway was getting an audition for Mary Delgado but me. So for those of you listening, really think about this. I was playing the role. Like, it was me. I was the type. I was playing it at the highest level you could be, and it was still a no. And other females who were so different than me, 6 feet tall, redheads, not the quote unquote Mary type, were getting auditions. So to understand that feeling of frustration, I just wanted to paint the picture for you. So after a little while of feeling my feelings, I threw my hands up and said, what am I going to do? I'm still going to go in and audition for one of the angels. The day of the audition, the casting director says, Renee, would you like to sing My Boyfriend's Back first or read the scene? And at that moment, Kyle, I heard this quiet little voice within say, you have to do this. It feels too right. And I looked at the casting director in the eyes and I said, you know, Jeff, I was really hoping to come in and read for the role of Mary Delgado. And I had no idea what the heck he was going to say. And he looks back at me and he goes, I was just thinking the same thing. I was like, amazing, great. So I do the audition that day and I leave there feeling so happy because I got the chance. That's all I wanted. I go back to my 8 shows a week on Broadway. Another 2 weeks go by. My agent calls me again. This time she says, you're Mary Delgado in the movie. Clint Eastwood loves you. And I was like, it was one of the most surreal moments of my life. Cut to first day of filming, never being on a TV or film set before. It was like jumping off of a cliff. But again, I heard that quiet voice within say, Renee, you know what you're doing. Clint Eastwood hired you. Trust in your talent and leap. And that first day and every day that I filmed, after we were done shooting for the day, I would sit and eat lunch with Clint Eastwood, ask him every question I could, and listen in a complete way because I am like a sponge and I like to absorb every opportunity I can to learn and grow. Well, a month into the film, I'm eating lunch once again because eating's my favorite thing to do. And I'm sitting with Clint and one of the producers of the film when they begin talking about how Clint knew he wanted me for the role when he saw me on Broadway. And I put my fork down and I said, do you guys want to hear a funny story? I never got an audition for Mary Delgado. The only reason I got to read the scenes is because I opened up my big mouth in the room and asked. And the two of them look at each other. They say, what do you mean? We requested you. We said, we want the girl from the Broadway show to come into this audition. And I found out that day that there was a middle person, casting associate, juggling a few films at once and just dropped the ball on having me come into audition. So in other words, Kyle, if I didn't have the ability to speak up in the room that day and communicate my desire, I could have missed my once in a lifetime opportunity. I could have been sitting in the movie theater watching Jersey Boys instead of on the screen in Jersey Boys, never knowing that Clint Eastwood was waiting for me to walk through that door.
Powerful. And so you spoke up for yourself. You had a vision, but I also want to talk about the other extreme of that. The weeks that went by that you might have had anxiety, you might have been triggered, you might have had doubts. And I can so relate to the story of times that something happened, something, you just have to be patient. And to get through that is a personal development exercise in itself. It's learning to be peaceful in the midst of the storm. It's learning to have faith. It's learning to trust. It's learning to release control of things instead of trying to force it. I used to be a very type A seminar promoter. People that knew me 20 years ago, they'll laugh and they'll say, Kyle has changed a lot. So I could relate to the person that I needed it. I needed it now. I was going to force communication. To now, it's kind of like what Jim Rohn really taught me was just to let things play out. And so you had to balance being attached in a way to your vision, but also releasing control of it and being okay during that time.
Ooh, that is such a beautiful point, Kyle. And I never thought of it that way. And as I reflect on what you just said, I was able to do that because of the fact that I did everything in my power that was in my control. And I think that's why I know that's why I love effective and clear communication so much, because I had the confidence to speak up and ask for what I wanted. The truth is, even if the casting director said no, yeah, would I have been disappointed? Sure. But I still would have walked away from that audition with my head held high because I would have said, good job, Renee. You did everything you could have done. It wasn't meant to be. And in my life, I believe that what's meant for us will not miss us. Yet, I also want to know that I've done everything in my power to do what I could do. And then it's surrender, baby. Then it's up to God, the universe, and what's meant to be will fall in place. And that's why so much of what I speak about on stages and I share with my clients is that element of speaking up and knowing that speaking up is your superpower.
Wow.
It's not just your right, it's your duty, because we have this life to live. Whether you believe this is your only life or many lives, regardless, we're here and now. Why not do everything we can to capitalize on having the opportunities that we deserve? And too often I see people missing out on opportunities because instead of listening to our gut instincts, our inner compass, our guide, we let that loud chatter of that inner critic or that part of ourselves that's just trying to protect us. We listen to that voice instead that's saying, Renee, who are you to ask for an audition? You've never even stepped on a film set before. Renee, they didn't give you an audition because you're not good enough. Do you think those things were going through my head? Of course, I'm a human. But because I tune in and communicate with myself every day, I'm tapped into that quiet voice of my soul. That's the truest part of ourselves, always guiding us with what to say, where to go, and what to do. So that's such a great point you brought up. And there is so much a balance of control and surrender, but we want to make sure that we're doing everything in our power to create the outcome that we would like.
And that's what comes to mind is you had done the work, because we've all had people that say, give me a shot, let me do this. I mean, every time I put on an event, I had 20 people that wanted 3 spots to speak,
Yep.
or whatever it may be. But you were prepared, you had done the work. And so, yes, ambition, yes, stepping out, yes, speaking up for ourselves, but equally be prepared, be doing the work,
Yes.
be in a place where when they say, yes, you got your shot, that you nail it, right? And
Yes.
that had been years of preparation, I'm sure. And that's
Yes.
back to your point of saying yes and showing up for all the previous opportunities.
Yes. 1000%. And I did an amazing podcast interview with the actor Chaz Palminteri,
Yes.
Tony Award-winning actor, A Bronx Tale. And our conversation was very connected to this. It was about showing up. Just show up in your life, right? Show up. You have these skills, you have this desire, you have this passion. Show up. That doesn't mean things are going to be easy. It wasn't easy for me. Most people don't even know that story about the movie. They just assume that, oh, Renee, you were on Broadway, so they pulled you from Broadway. And I'm like, oh, no, no, no. You have no idea. They wouldn't even give me an audition. But because I continually show up, even when I'm scared, even when I'm doubtful, that's a big part of what I teach, which is that imperfect action, taking action on things, even when all the conditions aren't the way you want them, even when it's not easy. So, yes, keep show up, and the rest that's meant to be will happen.
Have you always been high vibration, or is that something you put intention into to make sure that, because you do seem very motivated, you
Yes.
seem in a healthy, ambitious, but is that just, are you just doing what you're wired to do, or is that a combination of you've hit some walls and you've counted the cost? You're like, no, this is what I really want to do. This is what gives me purpose. This is what excites me.
It's both. Naturally, I am a very high energy person. I love life. I love people. I love learning and growing. I'm a student of life, and I love it. So yes, that ability to bring the good energy, that is very much a part of who I am. Yet there's another part of me, Kyle. I lived most of my life, you have to understand, as a performer, as a perfectionist, beating myself up, thinking that was the only way to get better, constantly taking myself down, which is so interesting because I never do that externally. Like my husband will always say, who's my greatest teacher, he's like, you're so funny. You'll beat yourself up. He goes, you would never treat another person like that. Why do you do it to yourself? So let's be transparent here, because there's no other way to be. There are days that I'm in tears from the voices in my head that are like, Renee, you're not good enough. Renee, dealing with anxiety. I've gone through a lot in my life, and a lot of loss, a lot of pain, and experiencing the aftermath of those traumas is a lot. And 4 years ago, right when I started my business, Kyle, I lost my father. I went through health challenges. I lost a child. I mean, one thing after another. And in many ways, that's all been affecting me in the past few years. So, yes, am I this high energy person? And do I intentionally bring that into the world? Yes. But do I also allow myself to feel my feelings and to feel sad and to own up to the fact that I feel anxious and I get anxiety at times and I have to work through that? Yes. And I think it's so important. So much of what I do is to pull the veil back because we're in this world of social media and people just showing their best moments. And it's so dangerous because, from a mental health perspective, this is why there's such a stigma with mental health. People can't see it per se, so there's not that same level of empathy when there's a physical setback. So for me, I like to share those moments when I'm like, guess what? I'm grieving today. Yesterday was Father's Day. Did you find me in tears in the car with my husband because I miss my father? Yes. And I like to share that because people need to know four of the most powerful words the human spirit can hear and understand. You are not alone.
Hmm.
So those people that may watch me and look to me and be like, wow, that's so great. Renee's all over the world speaking on stages. They need to also understand that I was just crying 5 minutes ago. And I looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, oh man, my face doesn't look so great today. That's so important because we have to know that we're in this together. And to be a human being is to be a whole being, which is feeling sad, happy, depressed, anxious, excited. And when we can own up to that and own all of who we are, that's when we step into our authentic selves. And only from our authentic self can we ever create real connections with others.
Wow, beautifully said. And you have a great awareness. And so I think the industry you're in forces you to do that, right? You're forced, if you're trying to make it as an actress or Broadway play, to it's going to force you into personal development, right?
Oh yeah.
You're
Oh,
not going to make it. But do you do tools like meditation, or do you have things that are important to you? Because I don't think people have that kind of awareness that don't have tools in their life or have been forced to go deeper.
yeah. You're such a great interviewer. I just want to stop and say
Well,
that
thank you.
and
Thank you.
give you praises because you're so calming. I just want to chat with you all day. I'm like, Kyle, your spirit and your voice is so peaceful. And it's just beautiful to hear.
Well, I got chills. I spend 3 hours every morning outside just with God because I live the other life. And now this is what,
Oh,
yeah.
what a gift. Well, oh, what a gift. It's such a gift to be here with
Thank
you.
you. Thank you so much.
I, like you, take so much time to get in communication with myself. And what I teach is called the connect method. And step one of that connect method is communication with self. And that is honing that relationship with yourself because that sets the foundation for all of your external communication. So for me, that means praying, meditating, grounding outside, moving my body. Part of my process is energize through movement. Get that stale energy so you transform it into fuel. So that way, when I am in the world sharing my energy, it's from a more aligned place because I've taken the time to connect with myself first. And a big part of that as well is journaling. A simple practice that I will share with all of you who are listening: when you wake up in the morning, instead of rolling over to your nightstand to grab your smartphone, to check your emails, or do what I call the good old S&C, scroll and compare, where you hop on social media and compare yourself against the perceived realities of others and then feel bad about yourself. Instead of that, check into your own life and ask yourself this one simple question: how am I feeling? How am I feeling? And then take 5 to 10 minutes and put pen to paper to write the answer. And the reason I say to write is because research shows time and time again that writing activates more parts of the brain. And cognitive scientist Daniel Willingham has noted that students remember what they think about. And when they are writing, they're thinking about formulating the letter that formulates the word, that formulates the sentence, thus giving them a deeper understanding of that information. So when it comes to writing about how you're feeling, this gets you in connection with yourself, because so many things are caught in our subconscious brains that we're not often aware of. And our subconscious mind is what's running the show. That's why we walk about our lives some days and you're just frustrated and you don't know why, and you're snapping at that person at work. That's because subconsciously you've buried something. But when you write and you bring it to the forefront of your conscious brain through your hand and onto the page, it becomes this beautiful spiritual expression that you then can look back and say, I've had times where I look back at what I wrote and I go, oh, I thought I was over that argument with my husband, but apparently I'm not, because I'm still writing about it.
Right.
And it gives you clues and insights as to what's going on within. So that way, when you move about the world and communicate with others, you're doing so from a more aligned, connected place.
Amazing. Jim Rohn talked about journals. So I've kept a journal for 25 years. Every year I start with a new journal. And you touched on something else that I just added in the last 6 months, and that was movement. And so before, I'm great in my head, I'm working the journal, I'm living in my head. But then when I discovered tapping and breath work and things like that, and then actually movement to then feel it in my body, which was very foreign to me. They say, where do you feel it? Well, I don't. And now I can tell you anything that triggers me or hits me or confronts me. I do feel it in my body. And then now I can, it's just, I can't explain why it works, but it works. Once you can find it in your body and love that part of yourself and release that energy through movement, it's been life-changing.
Yeah, because, think about this. We are a whole being. And I think back in the day, whenever that was, we thought, oh, this is our mental aspect, our spiritual aspect, our physical aspect. No, no, no. It's all connected. Think about this. When you get nervous, don't you all of a sudden get butterflies in your stomach?
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. That's a connection because it's a thought that affects you physically. That's true of everything. When we're dealing with stressors, we feel it in our bodies. That's why some people are like, oh, all of a sudden I have a backache. Well, it's not all of a sudden. What's going on in your life that has maybe triggered you mentally that's affecting that? So that's why it's so interesting when I share this process with my clients. Movement is never the first thing that comes to mind when you think of being able to communicate better. You're like, no, 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 Renee, I need to know what to say and how to say it. And I'm like, no, 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 no. If you don't move your body first, you are going to not be able to focus. You're going to feel stuck. And that stuck energy pulls you and holds you back from being able to communicate effectively.
And I love that. And you nailed it with stuck energy. Like that's the part I couldn't get my head around before, that once I started realizing, I don't even have to understand it. In the past, through journaling, I have to understand it. Now, sometimes I'm hitting the same problem for the 50th time, as you mentioned, right? Peeling that onion, but it's stuck energy that now is being confronted and being released. It's, we're kind of going off here, but that's why I encourage people to find coaches and to find people that can help them. And I love that you're so holistic in what you do. So in your book, Becoming a Master Communicator,
yes.
it's not just as simple as it sounds. You go into depth about all areas. And I've watched you in action, Renee. You are an empathetic, phenomenal listener. I have watched you just connect with your audience. People come up to you, doesn't matter what age, doesn't matter what race, doesn't matter what they look like. You're just sitting there listening to their stories, and people want to be heard. And after you've been on stage in front of 10,000 people and people come up to you and there's a long line, I know how I used to be. It's like, let's get this line moving, right? I have Jim Rohn signing autographs. And but you just really listen to people and connect with people. And I think that's a big part of your book, right?
Yes, 1000%. At the end of the day, we're all human beings, and all we want is to feel seen, heard, and understood. And we live in this world nowadays that can feel really complex. We have so many outlets to communicate: texting, emailing, WhatsApping, the latest app. I mean, there's so much going on that we are inundated with so much information. And is digital technology and artificial intelligence such a gift? Absolutely. But the one thing artificial intelligence can never replace is human connection. And that is one of the main points that I teach. That's one of my greatest life's purpose, is to help people get back to that authentic connection, because I believe that no matter how smart you are, beautiful, talented, you could be a billionaire, if you don't know how to connect with people in a real way, none of that matters. Because going back to the first point, all we want is to feel seen, heard, and understood. So if you sit with someone and you allow them to share their story and you connect with them, you make eye contact, you let them know that they're heard, whew, you better believe that you are going to have such a positive effect on that person, more than you can ever imagine, if you gave them the latest application.
Yeah, amazing. So what led you to writing the book? And by the way, actress, Broadway plays, dancer, but then you moved into the personal development space of speaking, coaching, and writing books. What was that transition like? And what led you to writing your current book?
Well, Kyle, I always wanted to write a book. That was one of my dreams. I've always been a writer. I write personalized children's books for my
Okay.
nieces and nephews. And
Oh,
I just always had a love of writing. And in 2017, I just started my most recent Broadway show, which was Pretty Woman the Musical. And it was the day before Thanksgiving, and I'm watching a Charlie Brown Thanksgiving on the television. And like so many of us who have dreams, and we often find ourselves talking about those dreams, thinking that our dreams are being safely kept alive in the arms of our words without taking action, I was doing that. And I got to a point where I said to myself out loud, I said, Renee, enough of talking about wanting to write a book. Sit down and write the damn first line. And I sat down, I took one of my little portable tables in front of my couch. Charlie Brown Thanksgiving was on the TV, and I just started.
hmm.
Just started. Did I know how to write a book? Absolutely not. Did I research what I had to do, the outline for it? Nope. I just was like, this is it, Renee. I'm sick of hearing you. And I started writing the first sentence. So at that point, I knew I wanted to write a book about communication, but I full time was doing 8 shows a week, Broadway. And then I was out to dinner one day with a friend of mine. She and I are chatting, catching up. And next to us sits a family of 5 parents, a teenage son, and 2 young kids under the age of 6. And the entire meal, Kyle, no one spoke, because everyone had their heads down in a digital device. The parents and the teenage son on their cell phones, and the kids on a video game thing. And my heart broke, because I looked over and thought to my upbringing, sitting around that kitchen table with my family, connecting. And I thought to myself, this family is missing out on beautiful moments of connection to be attached to their devices. And that's when the light bulb went off, and I said, I must write a book about this.
Hmm.
So while I was performing on Broadway, I'd get off the stage, sweating, full face of makeup on. The crew guys would let me use their office, and I would write. And when that show ended in 2019, I knew, again, listening to my gut instincts, I knew that I was ready to activate my other gifts of writing, of speaking, maybe coaching, but I didn't know how or what to do. But I just knew that I was ready to literally and figuratively write a new chapter. And then I saw Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi pop up on a video talking about this new course to start a business. I took the course. I bought the course, and a week later, the world shut down. It was the pandemic.
Okay.
And I immersed myself. Every day I'd wake up, I'd watch the modules, I'd put the action in, and that's how it all started. So I started coaching people just for free at first. And then I saw a need for help with people getting on video. So I created a course called Connecting on Camera to help business owners, entrepreneurs to be able to get on camera and be themselves. And that's how it started. And then I got my first book publishing deal, and it took off from there.
Wow. And the speaking, I mean, you're headlining some of the biggest tours out there. How did you get into the speaking space?
Yeah, one imperfect action step after another. I don't have a speaker. I'm not with a speaker's agency. It's all just me. And it goes back to what I teach, which is just being able to connect with people.
Hmm.
Again, connecting with people is one of my greatest loves. And that's what I do. I meet people, and then that person maybe sees me do something, they connect me with another person, and that's how I've been able to get on these stages. And I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful because I get to walk my walk. You know, I have a program called the Connect Method, where I help people to create these connections that lead to opportunity. And it's so in alignment with me because it's exactly what I've done through
Hmm.
my Broadway career. I say it all the time. Do I think I was able to reach Broadway because I was the best in the world singer, the best dancer, the best actor? No. Do I think I was the best at being able to connect with people in a real way? Yes. And because of that, when casting directors and directors would meet me, they would say, Renee, we just want you in the room with us. We just love your energy. I'd be at auditions, not competing with the other females in the room, collaborating with them, celebrating them. And this is what I teach others to do, because I think that's where we miss the mark in our society. We're so focused on, like, what can I get? I need to have the latest application. I need to be doing what so and so's doing. Instead of taking a step back and keeping it old school, baby, that old school way of communicating and letting others feel seen and heard. That's what I've done in my life.
Amazing. And you referenced something that I can so relate to as well, and that is we learn by doing. You know,
Yeah.
when I got in the seminar business, then I had to learn to give a presentation, then to book talks, then to get referrals and testimonials, then to learn to become the agent for all these speakers, then to learn to publish a book. Didn't know anything about that. Then had to learn how to build a team, then had to learn how to internet came, how to build a list, so forth and so on. And I think sometimes people are doing too many things, learning too much, and not focused on what's the one thing that's going to knock down all the dominoes, and go learn that. And you said earlier about connecting with people, but you know, I think mentors and having showing up, when you talked about showing up. So I'm wanting to get in the seminar business. I'm showing up at every event. I'm picking the seminar promoters' brains, but I'm also helping them move boxes. I'm volunteering. You know, you come and you become helpful. And by that, you endear yourself to people, and you're showing up with the right mindset, right?
That's it. Yes. It's so funny. So often people will say, because I don't lead with who I am or what I do, you know, and then they'll find out. They'll be like, wait, you were the girl in that movie? Wait, you've been on Broadway? And they're like, you're so down to earth. And I'm like, because I'm a human being. And I think, again, we live in this world of what do we praise? Influencers. And not that there's anything wrong with influencers, but I'm old school. I I know work ethic, like you're never going to outwork me. And I believe in showing up fully. And like you said, showing up doesn't mean just doing the job description. It means going above and beyond. You need extra help? What do you need? What can I help you with? And just going that extra mile, I mean, that's what life's about. We're all here to help each other. We're all here to help each other grow. And I think too often we get sidetracked by thinking what it should be. And this influencer just did this video on YouTube, so I'm going to try to do it like that. No, no, no. Instead of worrying about what that person's doing, let's take the time to figure out who we are, because the world needs us in all of our glory, with all of our imperfections. And when we show up in the world that way, that's what creates those real connections. I often say the parts of ourselves we want to hide the most are the parts that connect us with others the most. Instead of just showing those best parts, right? Like some of my best videos are never the ones, Kyle, where I did it in 50 takes and I was like, I got to make sure my hair's perfect. No, it was like when I was like, hey guys, just got out of the gym. I'm sweating. Like my hair's a mess. And somehow I get a million comments, right? Like you're like, go figure. But why is that? Because people, we all love the behind the scenes. We
Right.
all love learning about who someone is beyond their accomplishments. I know, at least for me, that's
Yeah.
true.
No, and authenticity saves so much time. You're
Oh,
only going to attract the people that want you. You're not going to pretend to be someone else to then attract the wrong person,
yeah,
then to disappoint them and they go away. It's just such a
that,
clever shortcut to get
that's a
to the
great
end
way.
result.
I love that, Kyle. Authenticity saves you time. And
It
it's
does.
so true. My husband and I talk about this a lot. Like we could never be be the type of people who lie all the time. Like we're like we can't even remember what we're doing in our regular life. Could you imagine trying to remember lies that you told people? Like I couldn't even do it. And you're right. I can only be myself because I don't have the time, the energy, the mental capacity to try to be anything else. It's too exhausting. And that goes back again to now what I teach and what I've lived in my own life. I've always just been me. And as a performer again, it's so funny. Like I now think back in that industry, it's so easy to think you have to be a certain way as well. But what I always did was I was just myself. And that's what allowed me to have the successes. Again, it wasn't because I was the best at this or that. It's that I was just always me. So if I tripped and fell when I walked in the audition room, I'd be like, oops, sorry, I'm a klutz sometimes. Like, I'm not trying to cover it up. It's just what happens. And I think that people, the world is craving authenticity. I
Mm.
know I am.
Yeah.
Kyle, and that's why I love speaking with you. And that's why you and I connected right away
Yeah.
because the one thing I value above anything else in this life is authenticity.
Mm.
And when I see that in people, I just want to grab it and hold it and keep it tight and close because there's too much of the other. And none of us have the time in our lives to search through the layers of like, well, who really is Kyle? I just want to know, who are you? Put it out there in the world to see, and then we can decide if we want to be besties.
I love that.
So one of the first days I went to the gym, and this is a great story I share in my book. I'm at the gym for the first day, so I don't know where anything is. So I get off the treadmill and I wanted to find a place to stretch. So I find a spot in the gym and I kind of like lay down and I'm stretching and I see this young mother walking toward me with her little girl. And I look where I'm laying and I realize I'm in the pathway to the gym, the daycare. So as she's walking around me, I said, I'm so sorry. I realize I'm in the walkway. And she looks at me and she goes, yeah, you are. Very rude, very abrupt. And I was like, oh no. I was like taken aback. And in my head, I'm like, this will not be one of my first days in LA. So I waited until she got out of the daycare. And I walked up to her very kindly and I said, excuse me, miss, there was no need to be so rude.
Mm.
And Kyle, she didn't know what to do. Like, she was like, lost for words, turns around, goes to the locker room. And I just had to say it because I said, no, that's so unacceptable. So I find another spot to stretch. 5 minutes later, I feel a shadow standing over me. It's the woman.
Mm.
And she said, excuse me. She said, I just want to say I'm sorry. You were so right. There was no need to be so rude. And I pop up like a Pop Tart and I was like, oh my goodness, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And it was this moment, Kyle, of understanding how important speaking up is in our lives. Because by speaking up, I was able to hold up a mirror to that woman to let her see the results of her actions that she probably wasn't aware of because no one ever made her aware. So I share this, and in the book, especially to let those people know who fear that speaking up piece because they believe that speaking up means being confrontational. I want you to hear this. Communication does not mean confrontation. And by believing they're one and the same, we're denying ourselves beautiful opportunities for connection. So with that situation, I was able to be a reflection for her. And hopefully now she'll go about her life and she'll think twice when someone speaks to her, she'll think to be a little bit kinder.
Such a powerful story. And the key was you weren't reactive, because some people, they think they stand up for themselves and they communicate by being reactive. And so it's always someone else's fault and someone did something to them. And that's what they think communication is. But that wasn't what you were doing at all. And I love that you said that's an opportunity for someone else to potentially grow. Sometimes we rob people from being triggered, rightfully so, because I grow the most when I'm triggered by someone and I get to go do the work, right? I get to say, why am I feeling this way? What is going on in my world that I would feel that way?
Yes. Yes.
So I love that. So Renee, you talked earlier about work ethic and showing up and focus. At the same time, I know you're in great shape and you take good care of yourself. And I think men in particular sometimes have a hard time with self-care. Like they think, okay, I'm going to go take over the world, but maybe they don't take care of themselves. Is that something you had to learn, or is that something you naturally understand the need to balance it all? You can't just work all the time.
Yeah, I believe that comes from my background as a performing artist, because as an entertainer, my body is my tool, right?
Yes.
If I'm sick, if I am injured, I can't get on stage. If I'm sick, I can't sing. So yes, I learned from a very early age that self-care is not selfish, it's a must. And I believe all the things that my husband has taught me, which is immeasurable and innumerable things, I believe what I've brought to his life is that understanding of self-care. My husband is very type A, incredible at his job, entrepreneur. He owned his own company for many years. So he like goes. And when we first started dating and everything, I let him know, like, you have to take care of yourself first, to the point that I even tell him, I'm like, you should go away for a weekend, like alone. Like, don't worry about me. You need to have you time. Like, I'm that wife. I'm like, no, you have to take care of yourself, because we can't take proper care of others if we're not in alignment. And I say this all the time, especially with the hard times that I experienced, as I shared with you 4 years ago, engaging all these different things. There are days that I have to sit and lay and cry and not do work. And that's hard for a type A person like me. But I've learned that I'm no good for anybody else if I can't feel peace within myself.
So powerful. So I really want to encourage people to get your book, Become a Master Communicator. What's the best way to do that?
Go to my website, reneemarino.com. You can get everything from there. And I also want to offer everyone, I have a brand new free resource, The Secret to Creating $1,000,000 Relationships. Go to my website. You can check everything out there. And also feel free to find me on Instagram. I also have my link in my bio. You can find that free resource there at I am Renée Marino.
I follow Renee. She's amazing. And we still have the lightning round of questions, but your book is so robust and we could spend hours just going down different strategies and tools that you offer. So just get the book. Trust me, you'll be glad you did. There's a reason she's so in demand, and what she's teaching and impacting audiences. These big events, they don't have people come back that the audience doesn't love. So and what I also love, Renee, is you bring value, right? That's what Jim Rohn taught. He said, bring value to the marketplace. That's the greatest marketing strategy, is just how do you bring value? And when you do, people will come, and then eventually they'll bring people with them too, right?
Yes, 1000%.
Do you have time for a few lightning round questions?
Yes, for sure.
Renee, do you have a favorite movie and why?
Oh, favorite movie. Okay, this is going to oh man.
And you can do more than one movie if you want.
Yeah, I know. Oh, that's so hard. Okay, so I'm gonna make you giggle, because this is something that I would do. So when I was on tour with Jersey Boys, I'm in different cities all the time. So I'm packing, repacking, and every time I would be packing, I would put on the movie The Wedding Planner. I don't know why. I'm a woman. I love my romantic comedies. And for some reason, it just brought me such happiness and joy. So I'm going to say The Wedding Planner, because sometimes you just need those movies that make you not think, they make you happy, and you can go on autopilot a little bit.
Love it. It's how it makes you feel, I guess, right?
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
do you have a favorite song, artist, or band?
One of my favorite songs that I sing a lot, I wrote and performed my one woman show. And I also had the honor of singing for David Foster at his home. And smile, smile, though your heart is aching. Smile, even though it's breaking. One of my favorite songs. Yes.
Love that. Wow. Tell me about your one woman play that you did.
It is called I Am Me Because of Three. And it's about the three people who raised me, my mom, my dad, and my grandmother. And it's just a beautiful story that helps you to understand what makes me who I am and the lessons that I learned from each of them, with songs weaved throughout. It's a really, really beautiful show. I performed it in LA twice, sold it out, and in New York City as well.
Amazing. So you sat down and wrote it and then put it together. And these
Yes.
aren't easy things to do, right?
No, no. And I sat down in Los Angeles with a friend of mine, my friend Dante Russo, who I performed with. He is an incredible, incredible writer, and he was just great at helping me put the pieces together. And then Ron Melrose, who wrote all of the musical arrangements for Jersey Boys, who is an incredible talent, incredible friend. He helped me to do the song, like weave the songs together.
So when are you going to bring that back out? Is
I
that
know, I know. As we're talking about it, I'm like, I feel like this needs to happen again.
how long is it?
An hour, 1 hour.
Is that something you could incorporate the night before some of your events or the night after, like kind of work in
That
conjunction with
actually
some of
is
the
a,
tours?
I don't know, Kyle, we needed to work on this together, because
I
that's
mean,
actually a great, great idea.
it could be part of a VIP package. They get to
Yes.
do kind of a meet and greet with you afterwards, or yeah, who knows?
Wow.
And again, you do it in the city for the entire city, but you
Yes.
have a built-in audience already with some of the events you're doing.
Wow. Yes. Woo.
Nice, nice.
Nice.
Well, I love that. I'd love to see it. I know Glenn Morshower talked about doing his one act play, and Quentin Tarantino came to it in Austin, and he had
Awesome.
no idea Quentin was a fan. And so Quentin left him this great message. He'd seen the very first movie Glenn had ever been in, and but it was very much a personal development type of production he created as well.
Yeah. Incredible.
Because yeah, that can't be easy to do if you're including music as well.
No, no, I usually do it with like a 5-piece band,
Oh,
which is,
wow.
yeah, it's pretty incredible. I'm really proud of it. And it's me. And that's what I love, right? It's just me. It's me, being funny, and talking about the Broadway shows I've done and how my parents, what they taught me, impacted me. It's just a really beautiful, beautiful story.
And I can see where the world would say, yeah, go do that. And they don't realize these are expensive. It's a lot of work.
Oh, yeah.
And so, yeah, to have a built-in audience already there definitely makes those things a little easier to,
Yes, for sure.
do you have any pet peeves?
Yes, disingenuine people. A big pet peeve, and this is why, so much of why I wrote my book. When you're speaking to someone, and as you're speaking, they take out their cell phone and they start texting, or they start answering. It's just, I teach this from stage, but when you're digitally distracted, that's a sign of disrespect.
Hmm.
And we see it all too often in our world today. Listen, I've been guilty of it. So I understand that it's just a no-no, but I would say that's one of my biggest pet peeves.
And that's a good reminder for all of us, right?
Yes.
Because I've watched you in action where you have so many people around you, but also you're part of an event. So you could be getting messages from the people putting it on, and you have a lot of moving pieces, and yet you stay so engaged, so focused. So thanks for setting the, being a role model for us.
Yeah, thank you. And that's important. I'm so grateful to hear that, because I really take pride in that, because it's very simple, right? Like, treat people the way you want to be treated. It's that simple. And if that's a pet peeve of mine, how could I do that to someone else? And when people, I so appreciate, like, when the attendees after a talk, they come up to me and they share their takeaways. I mean, that's such a gift for me. So I want to make sure that they are heard in what they're sharing.
And it's also can get messy too, because you might have to beep a place, right? I
Yes.
again, I
Yes.
would block and tackle for Jim Rohn and others. So we had to go from place A to B, and I'm trying to get Jim, and someone's talking to him. I'm like, hey, do y'all mind if we talk and walk? And so we would talk and walk,
Yes.
you know. And then
Yeah.
I remember once getting off the elevator and someone said, can we pray for you? And I said, well, can we pray and walk? Because we need to get from here to
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I love
uh,
that.
but yeah, it's a little messy because sometimes you want to be engaged, but you also have other
Yes.
things happening.
And Kyle, this is a great way to communicate effectively. For example, what I do is, if I'm in a situation like that where it's a message I have to answer, I will say to that person, I just want you to know I am with you. This is a message I have to answer. So can you hold on 1 second? And by communicating that, it takes out the guesswork, right? Because inevitably that other person is like, well, Kyle, that's so rude. Kyle's not even paying attention. So you cut out that miscommunication by just saying, "Hey, Kyle, I just need a second. I just need to get back to this, and I'm with you in a minute."
Very
How
nice.
easy is that?
Yeah, very nice. Renee, do you have a favorite quote that comes to mind? Or
Yes.
quote?
Yeah, the Maya Angelou quote that I believe is part of why I do what I do, and it represents my business and what I put out into the world. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget the way you made them feel.
Wow.
And so many times throughout my life, I'm so honored that I've heard that from people like, Renee, you just made me feel so good. You made me feel seen. Like, oh, how beautiful. Like that again, that's what life is about.
Mm. I'm sure you have many, but do you have one or two influences that stand out the most?
Oof. Well, my father who passed away 4 years ago, was just my greatest teacher. And he always said to me, Renee, I'll tell you how he said it in my Frank Marino accent. He'd be like,
Okay.
so my dad, his nickname for me was Little Shit. What are you doing, little shit? So I called him Big Shit. So he would say, Little Shit, listen to me. People are always going to try to change you. They'll try to knock you down, but you just always stay true to who you are and be confident in that person. The rest will fall into place.
Oh,
And he just always let me know that I always had to be myself and stand strong in that woman and speak up when I need to. And I just, every single day of my life, I am full of gratitude that he taught me that from a young age, because that's what's helped me to be here to now help others to do that.
love that. What's something most people don't know about you?
Something most people don't know about me, that I believe I'm an extroverted introvert. I mean, I think so, because this is what I'll say. I love people. Oh my gosh, people are my favorite thing. But I also need that quiet time. Like, I need to recharge my battery. And that's probably because I put so much energy out into the world that I need that time alone. I'm very reflective. I'm a very, very deep thinker. Some people who know me just as like silly Renee, like I'm crazy, I'm hopping all about, when they'll sit down with me and we have real conversations, which are my favorite ones, they're like, wow, you like, you thought about this a lot. You're very in depth. I'm like, oh yeah. All I do is think. Like, I'm like constantly going. So I feel like a lot of people don't know that about me.
So, Renee, do you have any philanthropic causes that are important to you?
I mean, I love, again, my father passed away from cancer. So, I do a lot of donating to cancer research and Special Olympics. That's one that's near and dear to my heart. But, you know, I try to, and veterans, you know, my father was a Vietnam vet. So I have a very, very big heart for those who serve. I mean, I really believe when we think of this world of influencers, I'm like, the people we should really be honoring are those who are serving our country and going into battle while we sit here and have the luxury of being on Zoom. So I love donating to the veterans.
What would you tell your 18-year-old self?
Be easier on yourself.
Hmm.
There's no need to beat yourself up. Love yourself and know that the mistakes are where the juice is. The juice is in the journey. So enjoy it more and stop being so hard on yourself.
That prompts a question that's not on the list, but it just made me think of it. And it's, do you have something that is that it could be just something you see as a huge challenge, but you wouldn't be here without it? Like Darren Hardy talks about the perfectionism he has because of his dad and how he was wired. He's like, but you know, I wouldn't be where I'm at if it wasn't for that. So I've learned to say, okay, I'm all right with it.
Yes, that is the same for me. Living my whole life as a perfectionist. I mean, I remember, Kyle, not just as in every area of my life. When I was in third grade, I got a C+ in reading comprehension. I cried for 2 weeks.
Hmm.
And like my older brother was like, I'd love to get a C+. Like, and I was just like devastated. And the same holds true for every area of my life. If I upset somebody or I disappointed somebody, beat myself up, working toward, you know, being on Broadway and in my rehearsals and practice, if I did something, you know, messed up, oh, it was torture. But yet again, I would never have had the successes that I've had without that. So I do, you know, I'm learning, I work a lot with my inner children and I love and honor that inner child because she was just doing what she thought she had to help me. And it did in so many ways. But I'm now at a point in my life, right? A new chapter where that doesn't serve me as much anymore. And I'm finding new ways to practice that imperfect action. And I like to say I'm now a reformed perfectionist.
Very nice. And again, it's like you said, it's not making it wrong. It's seeing all the really good things, but
Yes.
also seeing the balance to it.
Yes.
Renee, what's been your greatest lesson?
Oh, greatest lesson. I'd say just recently, going through a lot of mental turmoil, as I said, grief from the changes, you know, all at once. I faced a lot of loss. At the same time, the world shut down. At the same time, I started a whole new business. One where my whole life I was active, physical, 8 shows a week to then sitting behind a computer. Not a good combo for someone like me. And as I said, you know, now 3 years after that, in so many ways, that's what's so hard about grief and change. Sometimes it hits you when you least expect it. And the lesson that I've learned in all of this through the pain and days of, you know, deep anxiety and sadness, understanding that life is for me, as Tony Robbins always teaches, and taking each moment. People say 1 day at a time. I'm like, 1 hour at a time. 1 minute at a time. And just giving yourself so much love, so much grace, instead of judging myself for what I'm going through.
Wow. Do you set goals or do you set intentions? Or because I've seen you post about manifesting, what's kind of from a big picture, do you decide what you want to accomplish?
Yeah, I do. I set goals, dreams. I have my beautiful vision board here. And what I'm really learning about this world of manifesting, if you want to, let's use that word. It's really about the feeling. And just feeling as much joy as you can, as often as you can. And the funnest part, the most fun part is that you don't need a reason. Like, you can just feel joy by thinking about something that happened 12 years ago. And even though it has no bearing on your life now, if that makes you feel happiness, feel it, think about it. Who cares? Like, and I think that's what's fun about it, is you're like, I'm thinking about this one day when I was 18 at the roller skating ring, and I just felt so happy. I'm going to think about that. Like, it doesn't have to be something now. There are no rules. It's like, just feel good. And that's why one of the other things that I do every day, most days, is I prime. Tony Robbins priming. I love it because it gets you into the feeling. And the feeling is that most important piece.
Powerful. Final question. How do you define success?
Oh, success is waking up in the morning and looking forward to your day. Success is having work-life integration where the work you do supports the life you want to lead.
Well said. Renée, what an honor, what a pleasure to have you on the podcast today and to get to spend time with you, visit with you, catch up.
Oh, Kyle, this has been such a gift. Like, next time we do this, it has to be in person and we can have coffee and we can chat like this. These are the moments that light me up. So I have to thank you because you have started my Monday off in the best, most beautiful way. So thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Renée, I feel the same. And you name a place, I will be there. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of the week.
You too.